What's up, everyone? This is BJJ and Brews. I'm your host, Noah John, joined by my illustrious co-host, Christopher Vu. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Happy birthday also. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Are we allowed to do this? Like, is that a... Sorry.
Well, if people listen in the future, they'll be like, now, what year is this? Just a few things, as always. We're going to start and get in the habit of this. If you want to reach out to us, you can find us on social media, Instagram and Facebook at BJJ and Brews. You can also shoot us an email at bjjandbrews@gmail.com. And always like, subscribe, all that stuff. It actually does help us in the long run. And share. That's the big one. Thank you.
Like, subscribe, and share.
So we'll try and keep that to a minimum. This is just Chris and I chilling before class. So there's no brew to accompany this. Although we should do a Drunken Rolls edition.
Yeah, that's coming. That's coming.
But with that out of the way, Chris, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. I think now that January is over, everything is back. Like,
it was a really weird month.
Like between December and January, there was some extension of holiday-ish.
It's like everyone's, I don't know, it's like tying up the loose ends of 2019 or something. It was weird. I feel you on that.
Right?
I feel like things are just starting to,
FTR's
in my life, in the gym and everything, sort of get back into the normal swing of things. And the next thing we know, it's going to be June, and we'll be like, oh my God, it's summer.
I can't believe it's February. So you went on a trip recently.
Yeah, I went on a ski trip to New Hampshire, flew into Boston, went skiing at Loon Mountain on Friday, which was beautiful. As my father used to say, it would be a bluebird day, not a cloud in the sky. And then the following day, we went to Wachusett Mountain, which is in Massachusetts. It's just outside Boston, about 45 minutes. Wachusett, I think, or Wachusett.
Is that sort of like a combination of like
Massachusetts,
Orlando and like Tampa? So it's like, I don't
know. I spent the whole day trying to listen to people how they would say it, and then just copy what they were saying.
So is it like a Worcester, like Worcestershire, and then Worcester. To be Worcester somehow? Is it Wachusett?
I don't know, but it was a fun time. It was nice to be able to. I've just gotten into skiing thanks to some of the people at the gym, including Paul.
Did you ski before?
I cross-country skied as a kid, and I went downhill skiing once as a child. But the one thing that saved my butt when it came to skiing, because I skied once before this winter, and that was my first time back in a long, long time, since I downhill skied as a little kid. But is I skated as a kid. So I had some sort of muscle memory about movements from skating that I think helped translate over to downhill skiing and being able to carve back and forth.
When you say skating, not to make myself sound...
Ice skating.
Okay,
ice skating. All right. Sorry, not inline skate. I never inline skated. I think
or skateboard, right?
Or skateboard.
Or is that shredding? Is it the
we just said what we were doing was shredding, which was the skiing, but it was a good time. Very good weather. And I realized why the ticket was so cheap is because we flew back during the Super Bowl. So that's why.
Oh.
So we missed the second half of the Super Bowl, which wasn't a big deal.
Like, who gives a
but
fuck?
That's why. Well, if it was ADCC.
It's all right because we'll watch that the next day anyways.
Yeah. So speaking of what you've always talked about, Lloyd Irvin being a terrific marketer.
Yeah.
So I earlier today, I was looking at my phone, and Keenan Cornelius had posted the second day of a 5-day sweepstakes. Text flow, FOL, to a 6-digit thing. Yeah.
And?
So I did it.
Okay.
Because it put you at a sweepstake to get either a gi, a Hyperfly gi, or a lifetime membership to Keenan Online.
Really?
Yes. Constantly updated Keenan Online.
Oh, Keenan Online. Okay, I thought you were going to move out there for like a
No. Keenan Online. To Keenan Online. Oh my God, if it was a lifetime membership to him, I would still do it. I would still do it.
To AJJ? Like.
So, and when you do it, you get a free eBook that he wrote.
Oh, okay.
Co-authored with basically his head of marketing, which is an Aussie black belt. So I was starting to see how Keenan put his business together, which I think was really interesting. So I got the book. Obviously, it's a way to get leads. I don't know what they're going to try and sell me, honestly. except maybe just Keenan Online.
You just get a lot of spam emails.
That's what I would imagine.
Yeah.
So they asked for my first name. Once I text to it, they're like, "Great, to finish this process, I need your first name."
Yes,
I put it in. Then
they're going to be emailing you directly.
Yeah. So this is their way of getting leads, but I'm wondering, it was intriguing that he opted to do this strategy, because I've seen this in other fields, in other sectors. It
kind of works though, right?
But I don't know what the end goal is. If it's to sell Keenan Online and increase the subscriber base, then I get it, and maybe that's it. And maybe I'm overthinking it. But I thought there'd be more behind it. We'll see. We'll see in the emails that I get. But what I did end up getting was this ebook, and I paged through about 70 pages.
Whoa,
and it's
how big is this?
70 pages.
It's 70 pages.
Yeah, but it's kind of like it's borderline infographic.
Okay.
So it's more like very deep, like what could be considered terrible PowerPoint slides. Like, so too much text PowerPoint slides, but not an actual book.
Have you ever actually scrolled through the old school like Lloyd Irvin ads online?
No.
Where it's like it's sort of like, well, you've probably seen Muscle magazines, right? Like Muscle Tech would do those articles.
Oh, sponsored content.
Yeah. So like, and it would be like this 3-page thing about how Dexter Jackson used Muscle Tech products to achieve his Olympia goal, right? Like, and it would be pretty well written for a fucking ad, but it would just be a bunch of,
Well, this was well written. I didn't find it particularly useful. It was more like written theory, and really the pitch about why lapel grips and lapel guard is superior. So it was an interesting blend of...
That's really catering to a niche market.
I know, but
right?
it's a very interesting blend of information.
All right, let me. What do we got?
I actually have it on my phone.
Oh yeah, you can just email it to me.
I have it on my phone.
I mean, but would I be...
You wouldn't be
depriving Keenan of an additional lead, who's never going to move to California, or...
Point being, it was interesting to see something I've seen in my non-jiu-jitsu life. When it comes to branding, when it comes to building a business, when it comes to getting leads and the strategies business go and the lengths they go. And definitely the free ebook is something that I see very commonly, Sign up now, enter your information for a free ebook at no cost to you.
That's really interesting, because like most of these, I mean, I've fallen prey to those as well. Most of the time, the free ebooks you get it's very redundant content. It's nothing being an experienced person, like I don't know already. And it's a very good primer, but this actually sounds like it was very convincing.
Well, it was convincing enough that I wanted to get it. And then when I opened it, I was like, this is borderline useful to me, but it feels like jiu-jitsu with a motive. So that was the thing. Like, it was very clearly motivated by, I'm going to try and persuade you to buy into using lapel guard as a superior solution. I'm not going to tell you to buy my product. I'm just going to tell you, well, that's lapel guard is good. And then the next question is, well, how do I learn more? And guess who's right there with the blinking lights? Isn't
that sales 101? Is you
let them know what the problem is.
You sell benefits, not features.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's sales.
And you don't directly sell the product. You sell the idea behind the content.
Right.
And then the person is the one that
what is Sony's thing is like, we're going to try to create and sell you things that you didn't know but can't live without, or something like that. I forgot what their original motto was.
So it was a very interesting. Yeah. It was an interesting 5 minutes. I can tell you that.
Nice.
So we'll find out what happened there. But besides that, I wanted to bring up the topic of this BJJ Globetrotter video that I shared with you.
Yeah.
About
which one? I saw. No. Okay.
This is the one. This is the one that Charles led. So Charles, I forget which camp it was. It was a recent camp, but they had some seminars, and not seminars as in on the mat, but a roundtable discussion where everyone was just kind of sitting in chairs in a room,
which probably isn't done enough.
Probably not. Honestly.
And I think that's the crux of his thing was
exactly
right. Like,
and his point was talking about, in essence, he was arguing that in general the BJJ community probably rolls too hard too frequently. There's a time and a place to roll hard. His argument was once a week at most. unless you're ramping up for a competition, then that's different. But for just day-to-day training, once a week is probably sufficient. And then outside of that, you should be playing. That's going to be my word. We should be playing. You should have an objective. Whether or not your opponent knows what that objective is up to you. And you need to communicate with your partner that you don't want to go Pohada. And what was interesting is the examples he gave were, I think, relatable to everyone in that room. They were certainly relatable to me, and I think I think they're relatable to, I'm going to say 99% of the people who do jiu-jitsu, where whether it's the escalation situation where you're like, yeah, let's go easy, and then one guy goes a little harder, then you go a little harder, and it all comes down to ego and his point. So I'm not going to go into the whole thing. If you guys want to see it, I totally recommend it.
We'll put a link on the podcast.
We'll put a link in the post on Facebook
exactly.
and Instagram to go check that out. So the audio does get terrible at the second half. So
it's not terrible.
But
I mean,
it's just the mic gets hit a lot. The mic, But most of the key points are touched on at the very beginning. What were your thoughts on that?
I think he sort of so, not to use a weird analogy, but like all of the John Danaher stuff is nothing that we haven't seen before, but it's taught in a way that makes sense, right? And it's stuff that we do already, don't even realize we're doing it. Like, I guess the best example I can use for that is he talks about like inverting the knee when you shrimp for like hip escape or for elbow escapes, right? You know, we're taught to shrimp a certain way, but in practicality, people almost always end up modifying it to kind of invert the knee to make it fit properly in an elbow escape. And it's something that people end up doing, nobody talks about, but you're taught it that way, but everybody ends up modifying it anyway without it being taught to. And I feel as though like his conversation is that. Like, it's one of those things that we all experience, we all kind of talk about with ourselves in our heads. And because BJJ is so new, we haven't quite gotten to the point of how we handle certain situations that he addresses. But it's nothing that is unique to any gym or any practitioner in particular, you know. But it's the takeaway for me, which I think you can apply not just to jiu-jitsu but to life, is that like it never hurts to over communicate, or not over, but it never hurts to communicate properly.
Yeah,
and approach things with a proper attitude and objective, right? Like that's if you can get those three things in line, everybody's training experience will be better.
I think what's interesting is I was thinking of situations in my training, and they're like certain people where I'm like, I don't want that guy to beat me. You know what I mean? It's like the ego really does come into play, because I don't know, it's just kind of like what he said, right? I like his analogy that, I mean, all the analogies resonated with me, but I like how he said, you know, you go into your gym and there's that group of people that you expect to beat. There's this group of people that you expect to go even with, and there's those people that you expect for have them to beat you.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Like you identify, that's where you are in the pecking order, and it's really, really hard. And I think it's also because when you lose in jiu-jitsu, and I know we can define a lot about what losing is, you know, like what exactly does that mean? But I think the thing about jiu-jitsu is, because it's a combat art, because it involves grappling, because it involves some person putting their weight on you and all that, losing feels worse and bruises your ego more than, oh, I lost a game of bowling.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's
like it's there's almost kind of and maybe it's like a primal thing. And especially like think about, you know, any species where males are like fighting each other, you know, to figure out who's the alpha male of the group. It's like it goes counter to that, you know, because if you lose, it's not like, oh, I lost on the scoreboard. I got beat up. Did anyone see me? You know, do they really know I'm better than that? You know, like, oh, I was practicing some weird new guard. I was practicing lapel guard because I got this damn this thing from Keenan. I'm practicing it, and this guy passed my guard and smashed me the whole time. And everyone's like, does everyone think I'm not as good, or that guy's better than me? So these are the kind of things that I think.
Do you think, though, that just, not to cut you off, but like that's
all ego.
It is, right?
That's
like
totally
that's seeking
ego.
like external validation for whatever, instead of, because you know ultimately what it was, and if you got beat because you were working something, I mean, like, and you know that, so you should just be okay with it.
I think we all carry some level of insecurity.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
I remember.
I would be homeless otherwise, right? Like, you would just not care if you didn't have some level of insecurity about everything, right?
I don't know if insecurity is the difference between being apathetic, poor person, and successful. I don't see the connection there.
I mean, just in terms of like, because we just have a certain need to fulfill certain things. I mean, like,
I don't know if that comes from insecurity though.
What do you mean? Like, if you're insecure about, like, I just don't want to be hungry. That's going to force me to work.
That's a necessity. Right? Like, I need to eat if I want to live.
I mean, yeah, that's true.
The analogy I think of with insecurity, which I think is a great one, is and this might not always be true, but I think the analogy makes sense, is like the person who has like the Honda that has like souped it up, and they're like, they're going like super fast on the highway. And then the person who buys the Lambo and probably went 100 the first week, and then they drive the speed limit because they know they can go super fast, but they don't care to.
Sure.
I think the more confident one is in their discipline, in their sport, in the case of jiu-jitsu, the more comfortable they are with losing because they actually know. So I think because jiu-jitsu has more white belts and blue, it has more white belts and blue belts, and more blue belts and purple belts, and more purple belts and browns and browns and black. You're dealing with more people with insecurities about their jiu-jitsu game than people that have securities with their jiu-jitsu game. And I think that also feeds into this. And that's not unique to jiu-jitsu. I think what's unique to jiu-jitsu is I think insecurities are amplified and ego stuff is amplified because of the visceral nature of being dominated.
I got killed, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
I would have died in the wild.
Exactly. I mean,
that's the Joe Rogan thing.
That's what actually my VP asked me, you know, he'd written that little bit about me getting promoted in our weekly newsletter. Shout
out to your VP.
Yeah, Frankie. Hey, what's up? You know, he asked me, he's like, my challenge to you is, he's like, you had mentioned in the impromptu podcast afterwards, he's like, you know, that you kind of valued getting your black belt more than college. He's like, my task to you is write a little blurb to our company as to why you feel that way. And that was exactly what I said. I was like, you know, if I slacked off on a test, like, the consequences aren't nearly as dire as, like, theoretically being maimed, you know, your arm broken or killed, you know, via choke or something. So, like, the desire to improve is a lot more than just like, oh, I did poorly on that test, I'll just come back and get it, you know, and bring my average up on the next test or something, right? So, like, that's why it did mean more for me. And that probably applies to why people let their egos get control of them when they roll and whatnot, right? So just moving it forward a little bit in terms of, what was that guy's, the seminar that he did?
Charles Harriott.
I'm getting him mixed up with, Paynes? Chris Payne?
Chris Payne is the other black belt under
Prit.
Under Prit, yeah.
Prit.
But Charles is actually, he's American, and he's actually from Florida.
Oh, is he really?
Yeah. He just hasn't, I think he even has a place in Gainesville. Like, that's how close he is to us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But he's always traveling.
So, in practice, so is that, I feel as though his talk, just, you know, and just to keep with the primal, visceral theme of the conversation is, do you think his talk is what separates humans from Australopithecine afarensis? or Australopithecine robustus, right? Like there's just that one step behind an evolution behind us, right? Like we're beyond that little ape man, like basal ganglia, just like want to smash you with a rock. What separates us and makes us human is the ability to recognize that our egos can get in the way. That can be counterproductive for my own development along with my partner's development, and that's why we need to have that conversation, right?
To me, the takeaway that was most impactful and to me is the most persuasive argument of everything is it prevents injury. Because one of the negative side effects of ego rolling is you're increasing the likelihood of injury. And his thing was, and he got this from, he attributed this to Christian, the founder of BJJ Globetrotters.
And BJJ belt checker?
Yes. Yeah. Which is he doesn't want to associate with Globetrotters. It's its own entity.
Okay.
That's how, even though it's the same creator.
It's crowdsourced info.
Correct. It's got the same father, so to speak.
I just got another verification, by the way.
Way to
I'm
go.
over halfway there, bud.
There we go. So, and he got it from Christian, Charles did, which was to avoid injury, stretch every time before.
Oh, yeah.
And never go over 70%. I think it was 70.
I think it was 80.
Okay, never go over 80.
But either way, I mean, like...
Either way. And when I thought about it, I was like, that seems pretty reasonable because I don't think I go over 80 much at all.
I think that's because you're a mindful trainer. Yeah, it's terrible. And this is a... I don't want to sound...
This is an interlude on energy drinks, by the way.
This is like a woman's drink, right?
What's wrong with a woman's drink?
I mean, like...
Are you, as you like to say, are you doing that thing?
I mean, I guess I am, but like... I mean, it's a slimmer can... You know, it's a very non-masculine looking can. You know, it's got the
Dude, a Red Bull is the exact same can in terms of shape.
Red Bull, in my opinion,
looks less manly or less womanly? Oh, Jesus! Am I allowed to gender?
I don't know.
Wait, so you're saying Red Bull looks more or less manly than this?
I don't think they have genders. I don't really look at.
I don't know, man. This is a.
I don't think.
This doesn't. I don't drink this.
I'll tell you one thing: the marketing for Bang is definitely catered to men. That's for
no. It's catered towards 14-year-old boys. But I just feel. I don't know. I don't. Maybe some of it's placebo effect. I don't feel like I'm ready to go.
Well, you're the one. You're the one that wakes up and has a caffeine pill every day.
This is true.
So I don't think that's gonna.
No, it's not.
You need to just graduate to pre-workout.
Oh, I don't like that beta alanine.
And triple scoop that shit.
No, I mean like
that.
I don't
heart
like that
racing.
tingly.
Get that heart racing. Yeah, it's the tingles. That's what I heard. You get the shakes.
No, like literally like needles in your skin, like either niacin flush or beta alanine. I don't like that. Like
okay,
I just need to stay awake is what I'm really looking for. But
it's called 8 hours of sleep, buddy.
I get 8 hours of sleep.
Okay, there you go.
I get a lot going on. But so preventing injuries is rule number one. Right? Like do no harm.
Yeah.
Receive no harm and apply no harm in training. Do you? I mean, like, and that's one of those things. Maybe it's personal to me. I mean, like that's kind of how I always train.
Well, he also brought up another great point, which is if you go 100%. Suddenly adrenaline starts kicking in,
yes.
Which was a very interesting point. I didn't think of that. Adrenaline starts kicking in, and then suddenly your propensity for creativity and exploration drops, and you just start doing what you're really good at. Your body, rather, starts doing what it's good at, what it's familiar at. And I can attest to that in the one tournament I did, where I suddenly felt like I did very few things in my matches, way less than I do in training, because I just reverted to what I felt my body felt the most comfortable. My muscle memory felt the most comfortable doing.
So interestingly, shouldn't we? Do you think, given the appropriate amount of reps and training, you can add to that repertoire?
Absolutely.
But
you're not problem solving in a competitive match.
True.
A competitive match is pure action reaction.
But isn't it better to? So let's say our skill sets are limited to 10 moves of that. Our attributes is limited to. You know,
it's like one of those collectible card games. Assemble your deck.
I mean,
I want the Barambolo. I want the knee slice.
I was investigating the game Path of Exile. So.
Oh, okay. I'm familiar with that game.
Are you really?
Yeah, I'm familiar with that game.
My buddy plays Diablo 3, and he's like, Chris, this is free to play.
It's free to play, and and the game is all about people coming up with different specs. It's like if you look at that talent tree, it's absolutely insane.
Insane.
So people just create new, and the thing is, leveling is rather quick, so you can get to max level rather quickly.
Is it really?
So it's just a question of people do all these different specs.
So it's just basically the ultimate game.
It's the ultimate theory crafting game.
Okay, that sounds kind of fun, actually. Is this so? It's better than Diablo? Mm-hmm.
My friend,
gameplay wise, it looks almost identical.
My close friend who's a big gamer prefers it to Diablo 3 significantly. We both agree Diablo 2 was better at its time.
Okay.
Path of Exile just got a bunch of new players recently because of a new content patch, but it was dwindling.
What, Diablo 2?
No, Path of Exile.
Path of Exile. I mean, like, the amount of creativity, right? Like, and that was one of those fun things about that. So if, let's say, we're all allowed to operate our skill tree, and I want to be my little barbarian, right, with the Immortal King set.
Oh boy, if anyone gets that reference, man,
I think there are a lot more gamer nerds that do jiu-jitsu than
true.
You realize. But so, isn't it good just to keep on sharpening what you're good at, or is it that much better? So like time spent, 80-20 rule.
Good is subjective and relative to the person and their goals. If your goal is to be a world champion, then you probably need to refine your strengths.
Sure.
If you're someone like Tommy we talked to, Tommy said that if he, like, what did he say? Like, if I hit the move 5 times, I want to do something else.
That's,
something
I
along
get
those
bored
lines.
with it.
You know, and I get that. It's hard for me, I can tell you at my stage, I'm a blue belt. I've been a blue belt for a year, a little more than a year. For me, it's still just a dearth of new techniques and discovering kind of what I like, what I don't like, what works with my body type, that sort of thing. And I'm noticing that success with higher skilled opponents comes down to 2 factors. Either me knowing something that they don't know. So I go with someone that doesn't know leg locks.
Yeah, so like, that's the easiest.
That's the easiest example,
like
right?
Everybody always talks about
everyone,
it. Not you, but just like in general.
Exactly.
Like that, because it's a new part of the game.
Or my timing with a certain move is so good that I can hit it. And I think that's where I need to go once I've seen, quote, most of the techniques, and that's debatable if that's even possible, but I would argue that I want to say that by purple belt I've seen 80% of jiu-jitsu.
Oh, I mean, like Paul would argue the only thing that separates a purple belt, a high-level purple belt, to a black belt is just a little bit of time.
So if we're operating by that standard, then I want to say that it's a matter of refining timing, and I'm starting to notice that with good guys, the stuff I hit is the stuff, when I do it, it's fast. It's with what's the word? I do it with a real strong purpose and with confidence, and I'm not tentative with it. Like, it's boom, I hit, and they're like, there are a couple things that I feel like there's one thing in particular that I feel like I'm pretty good at, and the difference between that and something else is not me being able to do the technique in a demo situation or in a practice situation. They probably look the same, honestly. It's the fact that when I do it decisively when I roll, and it comes to me immediately. Like, I see the opening and boom, I hit it. Whereas, let's say if I'm in De La Hiva, I know sweeps in De La Hiva, but I'm not decisive. I don't see it and decisively go for it.
Right.
Let me compliment someone else, like Nikki. I call
That
him
De La
Nicky.
Riva back take.
The De La Riva back take, man.
He will. Yeah.
He is decisive with that. He's got those long ass Keenan Cornelius legs, and if you're standing up in his De La Riva, he will decisively go into it. And that's when we talk about people being good at something, it's that they're decisive and they don't hesitate. They don't hesitate when they see the opportunity, and they're decisive. They commit to the move.
I was gonna say, like, are you using decisively? I was going to use the word commitment actually. And how much do we find ourselves? And I'm probably the most guilty of this. Actually, is not committing to any moves. Like, you had talked about like ugly jiu-jitsu, right? Mm-hmm. And like,
that's where committing to the move is so important.
Is super important, because the moment you hesitate a little bit, right? Like, it opens opportunities for the opponent to kind of recognize what you're trying to do and blah, blah, blah. And it makes it ugly at that point.
And remove any momentum you might have had. Because we're talking about moving bodies, right? So if you have a second thought and suddenly you slow that momentum, now suddenly their mass is like slowing down. They can change their own center of mass and move in a different way and shift their weight and all that stuff.
And I just remember, like, that's one thing that JB had always tried to impress on me, is the idea that, like, if you just see an opportunity, just take it. All right? Like, and you deal with the consequences after that, because...
But you have to have the confidence in the move by doing enough reps with a resisting opponent in drilling to be able to
resisting
do
opponent that. Or an 80% resisting opponent?
A semi-resisting, a progressive resistant.
Progressive, okay.
So, and I don't say opponent, drilling partner.
Partner, yeah.
But it's weird, though, because the thing that I'm good at, I never really drilled that. I just kept trying it in live rolls.
What are you saying? Say it. What is it?
I'm not saying what. I'm not saying.
Why wouldn't you say it? Why aren't you saying it?
It's I think I'm as you would say. What's the? I did pretty okay. I'll use your terminology.
Pretty okay.
I think I'm pretty okay at single leg X on a combat base opponent, off balancing them and entering the honey hole. I'm pretty okay at that.
Good.
But I didn't really I never drilled that. That's what's interesting. So I feel like I'm contradicting myself.
But you're drilling it while rolling, because you're approaching it, I'd imagine, with...
It was a move that I thought was cool, so I'd always try it when I was in the situation, and that's why I got the reps against fully resisting opponents. So I really started to see the last time I hit it.
So does that go against?
I actually invented. I had a realization when I did it. Like, I made a snap judgment, like, I want to change my grip. I want to go from the collar and collar tie the head. Because in no-gi, you have to collar tie the head. But in gi, you can actually just grab the cross collar. And in my head, I was like, oh, I want that guy's head down. And I just immediately went there, snapped the head down, and swept. And I was like, this...
So
and then you have that euphoria of like, aha, it works.
Just different side, like, you hear all the different approaches to training and learning from... you and I both listen to Matt Byrne.
Mm-hmm. Which, by the way, they need to
they fell off, right?
They're falling off, man. You got to have consistent content, bro.
Call them out, right?
Yeah. Now. Well, I think they just released a new one. They just released a new one.
Okay.
And props to them. They were a bit of an inspiration to why we started this podcast.
Yeah.
So shout out to Josh and Keenan for that.
And they're both like professional athletes. I get it, right?
Absolutely.
They don't have like the sort of not monotonous routine, but just the kind of regiment that we probably
Josh is like he recorded a podcast in Australia.
He does it on
he's
the
doing
fly,
seminars and Keenan is competing. I get that. But definitely from strictly the podcasting point of view,
they're different sort of like philosophies about training and learning, right? Like if you Keenan, I mean, at this point, he's of the mindset of you don't even do like the 10,000 reps, right? Like his thing is, it's almost more of like a Kit Dale type of like you were getting your reps from the rolls is how you describe that, right? Like, whereas like I'm certain if you just, I mean, hell, Andre Galvao has a book called Drill to Win. Mm-hmm. And if you ever watch any of their training footage, it's like not mindless reps, but like reps with purpose and stuff, but it's just that building that muscle memory.
Yeah.
So like I would kind of argue that those are opposite ends of the spectrum. I like to think that for the non-professional athlete, the best way to learn is probably somewhere in between. But you just described to me something literally that you're pretty okay at, but you've done it without any.
I mean, I was
mindless
exposed to
reps,
it. I drilled it once, right? Like I was exposed to it, drilled it that day when I was exposed to it, and then since then it's all been.
So let's take a look at learning from this perspective now, right? Like, because the traditional way we learn something right now, and at least the way I prefer to train it with somebody, is you learn the technique against a non-resisting opponent just to get the mechanics down.
Correct.
Then, as both of you guys work together, they slowly kind of add resistance to it, right? If you do, and then you slowly add the sort of, all right, so now I get this down. What do you feel? What would you do next? And you kind of have to modify from there. And then when you're training against a fully resisting opponent, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, that person knows exactly what you're going to do. So, like, to me, it almost sort of defeats the purpose of, like, nobody's learning at that point, really. Whereas if you're trying to apply it in a sort of like live competitive situation where you're just doing it, you just see the opportunity, that's a more true reaction, right? Like, they're not even thinking about what you're doing preemptively. They're dealing with it at that moment just as you're dealing with it at that moment. And maybe that's why you get the swish, right? Like you hear about basketball players who talk about, like, oh, I know when it leaves my hand that's going to be that perfect shot, or
correct
cases, right? Maybe that's why you're getting that swish, is because it's this sort of like perfect in the moment. They've responded not exactly how you want them to, but because that's just what the situation presented, and you did right movement, right time.
So,
am I getting so over-romanticized about technique?
No, I think there's a lot of truth in what you say, and there are two things that I think of. One, it goes back to what Charles talked about, which is you can have a goal when you roll, and you don't have to tell your opponent what it is. And if one of those goals is, I want to hit this move, and if they don't know about it, then you will get a realistic look where they're considering a bunch of options from this position instead of just the one thing you want to do from that position. So I think rolling with a purpose is huge. The practical issue that arises is that for a long time, you will be unable to funnel people to those positions. So you either situationally spar. So maybe I'm coming up with the end. You situationally spar without an objective. So the instructor has people situationally spar from different positions without telling them an objective, but each person can have their own personal objective. That way they're already pre-funneled into a situation where they can practice what they're trying to do.
Then the level of individualizing everybody's sort of personal curriculum is interesting. Like, so, like, as an instructor, and the most, not efficient, but the effective way, or most efficient way to disseminate information, like for the past month, is deep half, right? Like, how do you, as an instructor, and I'm just broadly asking this question, is how do you as an instructor say, we're starting this position, what is your objective? You work your own objective from there. I would think that for the most part, given that position, whether it's you, whether it's me, whether it's Mark or Victor, whoever, in that position, our objective should be pretty similar.
So, it's funny because it's got me thinking about a couple things here. I think what's beautiful about jiu-jitsu, I've always talked about it, you've agreed with me, I think, where we've said jiu-jitsu is very young.
Yes.
Right? However,
I mean, is it really though? I mean, like, basketball
in a sense,
is technically like not much older.
But it's like we're figuring out how to teach it. But I want to say I do buy into the fact that there's something where each person has to have their own unique jiu-jitsu journey.
Yes.
And they have to be, so in the context of deep half, I think Paul's job as an instructor is to expose us to the widest amount of information with respect to deep half. And then it's up to us as students to personally identify what resonates, what works for our body structure, what we enjoy doing, what fits, for lack of a better term, with our game. And our game doesn't have to be what we're good at. It's just what works for us in our body structure. What's interesting is this is a factor, I think, in jiu-jitsu where it's not so much of a factor in wrestling. And wrestling is the oldest Olympic sport. And you know why? Because in wrestling, you're always wrestling against people of equal size. It's always emphasized. So, yes, what you teach a smaller guy versus a bigger guy might be different, but that's the only differentiation. In jiu-jitsu, part of jiu-jitsu is the fact that you have a small guy defeating the big guy.
And it's also the objective of wrestling is, if there's ever one single objective, it's, it's that. Whereas the objective of jiu-jitsu is there's so many more.
Correct.
So
and that's why it becomes a personal journey. Paul is really Morpheus in this respect, in my opinion. Should have the role of Morpheus. He's not telling us
on Netflix.
He's not telling us what to do. He's just showing us the doors.
Yeah.
And it's our job to figure out what doors we want to go through.
Actually, it's which pill do we want to take?
Well, that's he actually says later. He does say later. He's like, my job. I'm just going to show you the door, Neo. You have to be the one that.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
Which is by far the best scene in the movie when they go down with the helicopters going down, and
this is at the end.
And this is, by the way, the first movie by far the best. Should be on its own. The second two turn into a weird sci-fi trilogy that's enjoyable, but it's a totally different thing.
Religious. Thing, which that's another story altogether.
We'll see what they do in Matrix 4, which is in production. But first Matrix, one of my best all-time movies. The best scene is when that helicopter is going down. They just save Morpheus, and Neo is hanging down from like a bungee cord. Trinity just learned how to fly a helicopter and is flying him, who's holding on to Morpheus. So Trinity in a helicopter, big long rope coming down the helicopter. Neo there, hooked up to a rig, and he's holding on to Morpheus. They're losing control, blah, blah, blah. He drops Morpheus on a rooftop. He lands on the rooftop, and this helicopter is now heading for impending doom into a building. And he looks at that. He sees Trinity in trouble. He takes the rope, and he wraps it around. He's like, I got this. And he wraps it around his wrist like he's just going to hold the whole helicopter.
Right. Yeah.
Just that slow-mo of him like wrapping the cord around his head with this whole thing, to me was the most badass moment in the whole movie.
How do we even get to that?
Huh?
How did we get to the Matrix? Oh, Morpheus opening the door.
Yeah.
So Paul's job is to present to us the doors.
He's the Jedi Master.
Yeah, I mean he is. He right, like his idea, and he does show us the options, right? Like, so for deep half, he'd front hook, back hook, waiter sweep, and options from everyone, right? And I think, interestingly, deep half, I don't know, was probably one of the most, I don't want to use the term polarizing, but there are very few positions in jiu-jitsu where I've observed that, like, some things just don't work for this type of body versus this type of body. Like, you'll often find a way to make it work. Deep half was one of those positions where I was like, man, like, if you're super short against somebody who's super tall, it just doesn't work. Or it was interesting because I was just observing it right now.
You gotta get those hooks, brah.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. But so anyways, but he also needs to set up the situations and appropriately communicate to the students, how do you go about drilling it now? Like, not how do you go about drilling it, but like, so let's say, we learn the technique. At this point, we're 4 weeks into the curriculum. Situational sparring, start in deep half and go, right? Like, is the expectation at that point for the top person to, I guess, I don't know, it's their own preference, right? Like the bottom person, I'm just trying to use deep half as an example of like how you would say, how they would go about learning to funnel to what they want to do. Right?
Well, and that's the thing that goes back to what I said the big challenge is. I think when you're a white belt, you're just not going to be good enough in most cases to practice what you want to practice. You're obliged to practice what the superior person is putting you into.
Right.
And I felt that I was in side control. So what was the first thing that I got pretty okay at least at that level?
Yeah.
Side control escapes, framing. And doesn't mean that I mastered that, because once you go against higher level guys that have more sophisticated ways of pinning you, then you have to get better at escaping. But then you also realize that at the highest level, you just don't let yourself get into that position. If you look at high level guys, if they take your back in a if a black belt has his back taken in a competition, the match is over 95% of the time.
So let me ask you then, because we had a discussion. I had watched that. I think it was Christian's class, right? The one where like the theme of the class is just wrestle. And to me, like the way he described it, I was like, wow, that right there to me is what you just described as how you got good at doing that particular technique that you can hit, not at will, but just like you become pretty okay.
Oh, it's at will, baby.
But I mean, like, but the way of describing, like, he's like, I spent a year running classes this way. To me, that was the ultimate form of I've laid parameters. What was one of them? It was like, top guy is just trying to pass. Nobody's trying to submit. Bottom
that
guy
doesn't
is
make
trying
the
to.
thing about it is and I don't want to poke holes in something without the person here to defend.
Yeah.
But the question that came into my mind is, this would make sense only if the people are like high level blues or purples. They have a bunch of techniques in there.
But because like, so everybody had to come up with jiu-jitsu. Like jiu-jitsu.
No. I'm going to be pretty firm about this. And let's use our Path of Exile example here. Okay. Do I want to get really good at sharpening that level 1 dagger? Or do I want to get really good at sharpening that level 70 greatsword? If you don't know jiu-jitsu and you don't know techniques, what you end up doing is just sharpening very limited weapons.
I think though, so for example,
you probably sharpen your invisible jiu-jitsu, but you need to know what some movements. You need to know what a pass is. You can only pass. What if the guy doesn't know how to pass?
But experimentation. I mean, like, so I'm just gonna. I don't think I was discussing with you, but isn't that his way of teaching or drilling?
You'll get to something, but you'll get to it a lot
isn't
slower
that the ultimate
instead of being shown it.
Of a million or an infinite number of apes sitting at an infinite number of typewriters. Isn't that what he's doing? Is like, if we spend a month and
what I think is good about Christian's point is, if you want to get good at something, you just got to do it, and you got to do a lot of it, and you can't take the shortcut. You have to sweat, and you have to put effort out, and you have to do all that. I get. That's a wrestling room. Like, go and to be consistent with Charles doesn't mean hurt yourself. It just means, like Mike said, being up tempo, and not stopping. Not stopping doesn't mean you're going 100%, in my opinion.
Agreed, yeah.
So that I think is good, but you need to be taught and have a playbook or have a toolbox.
But I think, though, with enough experimentation, you figure it out, though, right? You figure out what works.
Or maybe you figure out where your holes are, and then you're motivated to learn what fills those holes.
Yeah, I mean, like...
Or it's like, Christian, I'm having a hard time with this, and when we're doing this game for 60 minutes, I kept finding myself this. What do I do? Oh, that's what you do for a double underpass, or that's what you do for a knee slice, or that's what you do for a back step. I get that. I think there's merit in what he says. I think it's a little oversimplified. And I think he's skipping a lot. I think he's skipping a lot of what he does in class, because I can guarantee. Well, I'm not going to say I can guarantee you, but I would guarantee. I would bet money, if I were a betting man, as I'd like to say, that he's omitting. He's like, I just let them do that. We did that for a year. He's omitting all the quote. I think he had a throwaway line like, I'll make little adjustments. Making little adjustments
might be 5 minutes of instruction.
Might be massively important to this whole system working.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the thing about it, to my original point, is just that being able, the fun part, why jiu-jitsu every day is more fun for me, and I hope it is for everyone, is that each day you get better, and each day by getting better, you're in more control of where the roll goes. And in doing so, you can practice what you want, and that should be more fun because you're practicing what you want to practice. And I think that's fun. That to me is what's fun, at least. You know, I think getting good at defense and escapes is probably what you're going to end up developing first.
Sure.
And when you're sitting there, you're like, man, this top pressure and this and that. That doesn't come early on. That comes way later when you've gotten good enough at defense and escapes and guard and sweeps that you're putting yourself on top.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, it's really simple. It's like, to me, the best way to lay out jiu-jitsu, if you want to be humble about it, I don't know why I'm using that word, but I'm just going to say be humble about it, is start on your butt, play guard, sweep, establish top pressure, advanced, submit. And this is really up your alley because it's
That's
a positional hierarchy.
baby.
Start at the bottom of the hierarchy and work your way up. You know, that's really what it is. It could be modified. If you're a really good wrestler, then it could be modified by secure the takedown, secure top control. But what you're really doing is just taking the shortcut to the top control.
Yeah. I mean, and plus, like, I think if you kind of ask the Helio Gracie line of jiu-jitsu is the reason why we even talk about like being on bottom, getting the sweep to be on top is that you're predicating on the idea that you're the smaller, weaker person getting taken down by somebody who's bigger,
Correct.
stronger,
Self-defense
more aggressive.
scenario.
Yeah, like purely self-defense. So that's why we sort of like preface it with that. So to go back to Craig's idea, I really like
Craig's idea?
Is it Craig?
Who? Craig Jones?
No, the
Charles.
oh my God, it's
Dude, I thought I was bad with names.
no, yeah, I'm really bad with names. Like terrible. Charles's point. What are your thoughts on? So he kind of gave some practical examples, right? And we had kind of chatted about that earlier. So if there's Captain Intensity, and everybody knows who that person is at the gym, like, and you want to approach your training with the never go more than 80%.
Yeah.
I want to train with a purpose. And his solution to that is the moment I forgot what he says. He's like, do you have the conversation first, or do you just sort of like make
have the
them
conversation
pay,
first, but if they don't listen,
then just tap out immediately?
yeah.
So I think there's
So it's like
two huge
super
bouts
rough.
of courage.
So it's like super rough. Like imagine like guy enters your De La Hiva, muscles through with a knee slice, roughly secures top pressure. You tap.
Yeah, that's a really good way of.
And you're
That's
like,
a good example.
And he's like, what?
so which takes more balls to do, right? Having the conversation in the first place, because I think most people will even fail at that point, and doing that. Like both of those take a tremendous amount of integrity in what you feel you want to accomplish.
What I'm trying to understand is why is Mr. Intensity viewed in such a way where he wouldn't be open and almost excited to quote flow roll? Like that's the other thing. It's like the person's like unapproachable for some reason, or unapproachable in that aspect. Like why would I feel uncomfortable going up to Ryan Wilkerson and saying, Ryan, let's be technical today?
I don't know. I mean, like,
I'm kind of wondering like why. I'm using and Ryan.
Are we imposing their
by the way,
map?
Ryan, if I'm listening, I love rolling with you.
Yeah, that's what I'm like. I enjoy training them.
I'm using you as an example because you're a very consistent and you can be physical when you want to. Sort of, it's not. You're technical as fuck too.
So, but so you're asking why is it that we impose the idea that they do roll hard or rough or however you want to call it, that also makes them unapproachable? We associate that with making them unapproachable.
It has to be. It's like why is it that there are some people at our gym that women don't want to
At
roll
all
with.
all gyms.
Yeah, but I'm just going to use our gym,
yeah.
you know. And then there are ones that women will roll with. It's the same thing.
Right.
You know, it's not a men.
So,
it's not women rolling
let
with
me
men.
throw
It's
this
not
out there.
It's just there are people, whether it's their fault or not, have an image of not being approachable when it comes to wanting to flow or something. I don't know. It's weird.
But so you just touched on two things that I'm not sure you meant to correlate with one another. But you used the idea that women don't want to roll with certain people. And you also did you say that, or did I miss you?
But then
Okay.
I did say afterwards, like it's not a women rolling with men; it's anybody.
Right. But
I was using it
then-
as an example of.
But have you noticed a pretty good correlation? I can speak from experience and just observation as well, that there are certain people who, when Paul says, instead of pairing people up, he's like, "Hey, who do you want to roll with? Hey, who do you want to? Hey, who do you want to roll with?" Women will almost invariably pick the same 5 people, you being one of them. So,
I don't know. Recently, I've gotten a.
I mean,
I'm like early running a bully of the year over there. But no,
But-
there's a group. But it's like, but here's the thing. That means there's a group of grapplers that are considered safe,
sure,
and a group that aren't. Why?
because
Because I don't. Number one, I think there's some falsity in that. Because I think a lot of the other grapplers are safe. There's also some truth in that. Because some of those grapplers might not be safe.
I think
The bigger question is, how come we can't have a conversation with any grappler about being safe when I'm sitting across from that grappler, like, hey, I want to do it this way? And that's Charles's point. But I'm trying to understand the psychology of it. Why?
Is it because that
why it's so hard to
seems-
broach it? Because we agree that the tapping thing is almost like
that's a sort
that's
of
the
passive
easier
aggressive
thing.
sort
It's
of
like, yeah, exactly.
you
It
know,
doesn't seem like
it's-
I get what Charles is trying to say, but it felt like it feels like kind of a, like you said, a passive
It's like
aggressive,
sort of like some
almost
sort of
dickish
millennial
mo-
sort of you know, like
like no. And yeah, I'm going to say there's a part of me.
in my opinion, you should just not roll that person in the first place. If you
Bingo.
know, for example,
Exactly. You need to know what you're getting yourself into.
yeah, like if you know,
And you need to be able to be comfortable enough, and we do say that here. If you don't want to, you're not obliged to roll with anybody.
you're not obliged to roll at all.
Exactly.
Yeah, right. So it's
Exactly.
like-
So if you don't want, if you're not comfortable rolling with someone, whatever, or you fine. You don't have to. But the point is why are there so many people, whether it's justified or not, that it seems so hard to imagine that they would be open to the idea of rolling a certain way, different from how they're perceived as rolling all the time.
It's probably it's the exact same problem about why 90% of the world's problems exist in the first place is just
Back to communication.
a lack of communication, right? Or not even a lack of communication, just a failure to approach the idea of communicating because of the story that we've created in our head about how that person's going to react to us asking.
So you're saying we could potentially be solving the crisis in the Middle East just right now, just by
Yeah.
being able to talk to our neighbor. If we can talk to our fellow grappler,
I mean, like,
we
maybe
can-
Jimmy
can
Carter
we
was
reach
onto
across
something.
colored belt lines.
Right? Like, isn't that the whole thing? I mean, I just, but a big part of it is sort of, in mind, that's a very new school mentality too, right? Like that's a very
What's new school?
like just the communicating.
Oh,
Right, like that's a new school.
I think
thing.
new school is also flow rolling.
Yes, I mean, like because I mean, is it though? Because I mean, if you look at,
Well, then there's that movie Roll, that documentary Roll, and it's like, look at Hickson playing with me. It was awesome, you know. He's
Yeah.
just playing with me.
and that's where, from my understanding, I've never experienced it myself, but the Gracie Academy in whatever city it is, Modesto,
San Diego, I think,
here
or
in
L.A. Oh, the one here.
Huron and Henner's Academy,
Oh,
like the
yeah.
official Torrance is the right.
Okay.
That's where it is. From my understanding, like all of their rolling, like it's not even 80%. It's like and not to name drop, SBG a little bit, but like SBG, one of their original philosophies was play as the way.
Yeah.
Like, and this is dating back to the late 90s.
Wouldn't you say that some part of jiu-jitsu in the 90s and early 2000s was weed out soft people with?
Oh, sure.
So I think that
But that's the machismo.
I think we're probably still feeling the effects of that. Just like, why do fraternities continue to haze their peoples? Because the P guys before got hazed, and then they got a haze.
Well, it's also, you can
I'm
greatly
oversimplifying
increase
it.
your bank account if you find ways to not water it down, but to make it more approachable, right? Like, but I mean, like, if you think of the introduction of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to America, it was this sort of, not like an honor culture, but it was sort of like an honor thing, right? Like, where it was all the sort of challenge matches and that sort of thing, where maybe that was a huge disservice to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. While it did display the absolute effectiveness of it, it's already painting it in this sort of like negative machismo, contentious light especially amongst the martial arts community, but and it just it looks
Dojo
bad
storming,
when you're publishing an ad in Playboy magazine and Black Belt magazine about how you'll offer $10,000 to anybody who can come and defeat your style of martial arts.
So that's, again, those are the roots of jiu-jitsu in the United States.
Sure,
and the marketing
in Brazil too.
But I will say, I'll just tell you my personal approach to this whole thing, because I don't, unless I'm really feeling run down, I never really say like I'm flowing, but I very rarely go over 80, in my opinion. But I'm just of the opinion, if I'm going with someone that wants to win, my opinion is I should be good enough to defend myself and still stay within my parameters of rolling.
But sometimes that's just not possible.
I'm not telling you what I'm just telling you what my stance is. I'm not telling you what
overly
is right.
idealized situation, though. I mean, or an overly idealized, just like, for example, I can try all I want to go my 80%. And to keep Kali off of me and from him smashing his chest and belly into my face and stuff, right? Like, it's not going to happen, regardless of how good my technique is.
So then what's the difference between trying at 100% and... I guess that's the thing. How much do you get from that extra 20%? If you're going to fail anyway at 80, well, you're probably going to fail at 100 too.
I guess maybe I'm not really going 100 then. I have to go 100 to defend myself. But am I going to win at going 100? Probably not. I
think that's the thing. I think people undervalue how good we can be relaxed and not operating at 100%. To me, the 100% comes from using attributes to complete techniques that are being applied imperfectly.
But you just said there's no perfect technique, though. Or not just said. But
but if you're going with guys that are bigger than you, you're gonna exert yourself more. 100%. If I go with someone bigger, I have to exert myself more.
Right. I mean,
right, and that's where I think the strength component of it comes into it.
But is it? Do you have to exert yourself more, or do you just have to adjust your technique because you don't have the right angle, you don't have the right point of leverage?
But you definitely need. There reaches a point where the person can get just too big, and I can be too small.
Yeah, like it's just you can be at the perfect angle on everything on Jeremiah. You're not doing shit.
The hope you have is that as you get bigger, doesn't mean it's not like in a video game where everyone's attributes go up. In reality, when you get the bigger you get, you lose other attributes, and that's what I hope in my belief system evens the field out to some degree. Strength is a hugely important component when it comes to jiu-jitsu, but so is stamina. And I would argue that
so is timing.
So is timing. So is speed. But let's just talk about stamina. I would argue that if we're talking about really big guys, their stamina is going to take a hit as a result.
Sure.
Whereas, a guy like Mikey can just go forever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He ain't the smallest guy either, though.
He's not the smallest guy, but that's my point. So,
yeah.
Again, this was the whole point of my saying my initial thing about you should be able to defend, or not even you. I believe I should be able to handle myself at 80% anyway. That's my own personal belief, and that's how I approach it. So I don't change too much. Now, what does happen to me is I can get emotional, I can get angry, and then that will change the way I roll.
Sure.
So if I feel like someone
But doesn't one require? I mean, can one argue that it that extra 20% to get to that 100% requires a bit of emotion, or requires a bit of?
Hopefully it doesn't, because you want to have a clear head.
Of course, I mean, I'm just saying, but sometimes is that what it takes for us to tap that extra little bit?
Oh, now you're talking about the difference between the light side and the dark side, bro.
Yeah, I mean,
tapping into the anger instead of tapping into
you
clarity.
have to, because can you really go 100% if you're not tapping? I mean, like using all of your facilities, including your cortisol, to really activate fight or flight. I don't know.
So let's define a little more clearly what 100% means. In my mind, 100% means a couple things. It means you're using maximum strength on submission attempts.
Maximum strength to
finish.
Achieve it. I mean, so like
you're also using strength to blow through things. Like I'm not going to slide. Like I'm going to power through things. Like I'm going
to any adhesions that might occur through the technique here. So let's use something like a cross choke, for example, which we don't do a ton of at the gym here, but is going 100%. The willingness to sit there and, rather than get that perfect blade action.
Oh, 100%.
Some of this.
No,
action.
100%. 100% also goes into how much me lowering the regard I have for my opponent's body. Which is what triggers me.
That's usually
when I get angry.
Me.
It's when I feel like my training partner, not my opponent, my training partner, has taken advantage of the trust I've put in him or her when it comes to training. And I'll admit, when I was a white belt, I said this when we had Jamie on, which, by the way, will be dropping this
2 weeks
coming
from now.
Right now. The next one, this Saturday, is dropping.
Jamie, then Michelle after that.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's okay.
Spoilers.
That's okay. I mean, they'll have been out.
Reverse spoilers. Yeah.
Reverse spoilers. For the pass out. No, I would say pretty quick to realize that being schizo was not beneficial to me and my jiu-jitsu development, and it took I said 2 weeks for me to realize I just have to practice and accept the fact that I'm the worst on the mat.
Some people are never going to
right. No, and I know that sounds kind of ludicrous to some people. Like 2 weeks. I mean, but whatever. It took 2 weeks, and I was like, okay, yeah, I just got to accept it. But it took me a lot longer to realize to what degree my training partner's body was in my hands.
And that's
I thought I was okay. I thought I was okay, but then I realized Ryan was a guy that kind of showed me the light a little bit. JB showed me the light to some degree, where I realized I suddenly became aware of what the shitty positions are.
Yeah.
And how to test the water on that. If it's not there, release. So just yesterday, I was rolling and a guy a white belt had me with some attempt of a cross choke. It was like a cross choke with legs involved, and it was over my mouth. I had a mouthpiece in, thankfully.
Oh yeah.
And he was tugging on this thing like he was trying to start a lawnmower. And I was just breathing and I wasn't getting that angry. I was just like, okay, all right.
So there's
okay. And to the white belt's credit, afterwards, he's like, I hope I didn't, in the locker rooms, I hope I didn't. I was testing the waters.
Fact that he recognizes that?
I was like, you're ahead of the game, bro. I told him, I was like, you're ahead of the game, The fact that you recognize that. I was like, if you keep doing it, you're just going to start angering your training partner.
So my question to him, hypothetically, is, if you're asking that to you,
why didn't
you just stop it in the fucking first place, right?
I was okay with it. I was like, you're ahead of the game.
So, okay, my rule of thumb, right? To me, if you're grappling me, and this is, I'm not, it's my thing. Mm-hmm. If I hear you snarling, you're kind of being a dick. If I have to snarl to try to make something happen, I automatically know at that point, right? I'm kind of being a dick. So I don't need a snarl, right? Jiu-jitsu should not require snarling. We're not, it's not mundials, right? And that's my
boy.
Is that a good? I mean, is that a good barometer?
People
the
don't-
snarling factor.
But people might not know that they're snarling.
What do you mean? How do you
No,
not
but
know that you're
they don't know if
snarling?
that's like a bad thing or something.
Yeah,
Like that,
I mean-
like they don't know what normal behavior should be on the mat.
I guess so.
What
I
good
mean,
behavior on the mat is. But anyway, that's
So is that something I need to add to my VU speech of no injuries?
maybe.
It's like, guys, if you need to snarl to finish a technique, you're not doing the technique.
But so again, I mean, it did take me time to realize that. It took me about to be a 3 or 4 stripe white belt until I realized to what degree I need to be mindful of. I don't think I was dangerous.
Did you ever snarl though?
No, I never snarled, but my interest in finishing submissions, or I paid little to no thought of my opponent's body or my partner's body. I wasn't malicious. I was just indifferent to it by ignorance. I was just ignorant of the fact that, like,
Yeah, you just didn't. Yeah, I mean,
I'm like and that's because I had training partners that didn't take liberties with me. So I wasn't shown, oh, that's like, I don't want to be like that, so I'm not going to do it to someone. If I don't like this, I'm not going to do it to someone else. But the thing is, that's my reaction. Some people's reactions, for whatever reason, and I'll probably think more people react like this. If something nasty gets done to them, at some level, they almost want to get it back and do it to someone else.
Exactly.
And that's what's fucked up. And I can't understand human psychology, because my reaction is the opposite. I'm like, oh, I wouldn't
want to do that. Right?
I don't want to do that to someone
But
else.
that's what's just being taught in general, right? Like, I mean, Thornton talks about, like, early on, and he's like, I had to do a lot of maturing, right? Because the idea early on of some mat bully comes in just off the street, and he's just some big, strong, aggressive guy who's athletic, whatever it is. In general, like, he's like, we would stick the enforcer on him. But what does that teach him, right? Like, the solution
Fire
to
with
somebody.
fire.
What's that?
Fire with fire.
Yeah, it's like the pour gasoline on the fire, essentially, right? So, but what is it? So now, let's say he kind of gets off on that, whatever it is. He becomes a member of the gym. Now he's now. All it does is just perpetuate that, like, snarling culture, right? Versus, like, what to produce a better training environment. Wouldn't the better thing to do have just been have a conversation with the guy and say, dude, chill the fuck out?
Is it because we don't think it's possible?
But they do that now, apparently. I don't know. I'm not a member of SBG. But, they talk
Is
about
it because
this.
we want to sell jiu-jitsu, and if we sell it by saying we don't do that, the tough guy's going to be like, look at these, they're a bunch of pussies. Excuse my language.
But that
that's
dude's
the
going
thing.
to... But that, I mean, like...
And then do we want that guy in the gym? So
exactly,
there's a whole
right? Because
plethora
he's
of
going to
things.
drive away
There's a whole plethora
more
of, like,
students than,
motivations there. So I think it also comes down to what kind of gym culture you want to have.
Right. I mean, like... yeah. I mean, that's the...
So, Chris, we have to get ready for class.
Yeah, we do.
Soon. We finished Deep Half last month.
Mm-hmm.
There's a good chance we're going to do something new. What do you want? I don't know what it is. Do you know what it is?
I don't.
What would you like it to be?
I would have known what it is. I think if it's what you guys did yesterday in the afternoon.
Nope.
You didn't? Okay. So what you guys did in the afternoon
We did Deep
with
Half.
Tommy.
We did
Oh,
Deep-
the back take, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay, so then scratch that.
What would you like
Man.
this month's module to be if you had control?
I would really love a deep dive into...
If you talk about knee cut pass.
We've done quite a bit of De La Riva. Maybe something old school, man. Like, me, I'm gonna always go back to close guard.
Okay.
I would love some close guard stuff. But to your point, so now that everybody is gonna be moving on to the new hotness, I'm gonna be trying my damnedest to do some deep half
deep
on
half
people,
now. Well, that's the way
and
to
hit
go,
it
man.
with the Magneto perfection.
Okay, so your thing would be...
Or what's the next most logical step from there? Some sort of a back thing, because we did work taking the back from there. What's the next sort of logical step and permutations from where we ended with deep half?
I would say double under and over under passing.
Yeah, something like that.
But
But then again, that's just...
What would you like it to be?
I want it to be close guard.
You
know
want it to be
I
close
love close
guard.
guard. And I think maybe things are coming full circle. I think I'm starting to see a little bit more sort of like re-recognition of close guard in the jiu-jitsu community. It's becoming kind of the new hotness again.
So for me,
Yeah, what are you...
reverse De La Riva.
RDL. Did I give you...
RDL. RDL because selfishly, I find myself there, and I'm without ideas.
And there is zero content out there for RDL right now. There's
Really?
just one that I might know of.
So that's my thing. I know a few basic things, but it's more of a guard recovery.
Yeah.
I know you can do Kiss of the Dragon, but all that stuff involves standing opponents, and everyone that I'm doing is like knee cutting hard.
Yeah.
I switched to it, and now they're in a combat base in my reverse De La Hiva. So that would be something that would help me, I feel, grow immensely as a grappler, because it would fill a gap, just like DPAF did before, and just as the 50-50 stuff helped a few months ago, because 50-50 was a huge gap in my game.
But how often are you really getting... I mean, well, you're playing for legs more, so 50-50, I imagine you were encountering more. Or how often do you really encounter 50-50?
I didn't know what to do if I got into it. Nobody really got me into it, but I knew it was a gap.
Okay.
RDL is something where I'm getting into it,
And
I just know one thing. I go to Lebo guard and recover.
Oh, okay. That's what
That's what I do. That's it. Or they stand up and I go back to De La
And you
Hiva.
can go to Ashi.
So that's what I'd like to do. So we have time. We got to do our stretching.
Yes.
So we don't get hurt, and then we just got to make sure we stay in third gear the entire time.
On a 5 gear? It'd be 4th gear, though. On 5 speed?
I know, but you said that you never leave third gear. I remember you saying
Did
that.
I really?
Yeah. you're
Okay,
like,
maybe,
I can't
I
get
have
out.
a 4 speed in my world.
All right, Chris. Until next time.
It was